Sydney from Indie Boards and Cards. This is our video, of course. And we're going to be talking about all things Aeons End today. Sydney, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love talking about Aeon's End. Everyone around me keeps telling me to stop.
That's awesome. Well, so today we're going to really kind of delve into Aeon's End. So we're going to talk about where it came from, where it is today, what's coming up next. Pretty exciting. And I will tell everybody we kind of spoiled something in our thumbnail for this video. So we'll talk about that towards the end. So let's start with where Aeon's End began. This was a game designed by Kevin Riley many years ago. It does some really neat things with deck building that really kind of changed how people looked at this. And the gameplay is really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a super unique deck builder because unlike most deck builders, it is cooperative. And even beyond that, there is a really different randomization element than most deck builders. And obviously, sort of the goal in deck builders is to get the best assortment of cards into your deck so that you can have the best hands you possibly have. But when you shuffle your deck, that adds an element of luck and trying to get your combo pieces together. But in Aeon's End, when you run out of cards to draw, instead of shuffling your deck, you turn your discard pile entirely over so you can stack things so that you're playing exactly the hands that you want to be playing, that you know you were going to be playing ahead of time. And it just provides a whole extra level of strategy. And then with the cooperative element of table discussion and teamwork and discussion that I haven't found in another deck builder, which is why this one is my favorite. And the randomization then comes back in because you're all working together to fight a nemesis called a Nameless, which is a huge monster from the void, another dimension. And it takes turns too. And what order all the players and the nemesis take turns in is randomized every single round. So you can never know if you're going to be able to get your spells off before the nemesis does its attacks or how things are going to work out. And that adds back in that layer of randomization for a really enjoyable experience.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned, so it is a co-op.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really, really tough. I found that, and the thing is, it's really fun about how tough it is. As a co-op, sometimes games that are co-op, there's like one person kind of like that can take over. This game doesn't really allow for that. Do you want to talk a little bit about like the difficulty of the game and why everybody's contribution really matters?
Yeah, so one of the cool things about it is it's got a ton of replayability because there are a bunch of different Nameless to fight. And when I say a bunch, I mean upwards of 30 at this point in the game, and we're only designing more. So every fight is different, every Nameless is unique. In addition to that, all the players are playing their own mage. And every mage has their own unique starting card in their deck. They also have their own unique ability that they can trigger over the course of the game. So there is no optimized way to build your deck, unlike maybe some other deck builders might have, where everyone is starting from even ground. Each mage kind of has a specialization. Some might want to be, casting big spells and doing large amounts of damage, and others are supporting their fellow mages. Maybe they're healers. Maybe they help other people get more money to buy bigger cards. And so you can really find fights and combinations that are stronger, that are weaker, that are harder, that are easier. So we have, intro level bosses ranging all the way up to really difficult bosses that we recommend for experienced players. Because just there are so many levers and knobs to turn. And I'm not even getting into building your market of cards that you can buy from. So because there's so much complexity with each mage in terms of what they're trying to do and their own unique strategies, it's hard for an alpha gamer, to come out. Everybody gets an equal number of turns, and everybody is in charge of their own deck and what it's doing. And not everyone's deck is going to be doing the same things, and nobody's characters are going to be playing the same. So it's up to you to find a character that suits your play style, or swap around and find all different ways to fight nemesis and to win against the battles.
That's excellent. So what happened? It kind of took off, this game. It really took everybody by surprise and took off many years ago. And it has had multiple expansions. I think we all like to call them expandalones, because it's got regular expansions where you're just adding cards that are, they come out with each edition, but then a new base game that can be added to the other content, mixed with the other content, comes out. You talk about how all of the different games can play together. We'll get into some of the more complicated stuff in just a minute, though.
Yeah, one of the best things about Aeon's End is that all the content is cross-compatible. So that means that any mage from any expansion, standalone or not standalone, can be mixed with any other mage in the same combat. You can take market cards from any expansion and mix them together. You can fight nemesis from any expansion and fight with them together. So when you get a new boxes of it, new expansions, that content stretches across all of the different content that has already come out for the game. And every year we try to put out a new full box expansion with all the components you need to play. So the dials and tokens and basic cards that are just required to set up the game, in addition to new mages, new market cards, new nemesis, all of the more fun stuff that then goes cross-compatible. So we already have 5 of those big boxes out, and I forgot to count how many small boxes, but somewhere around
it's like 2 per
10 to 15
game, right?
A couple of them have 3 though, so it's around 10 or 11. And so just a ton of different content to try out, and knowing ahead of time what we're going to transition into. One of the coolest things about Aeon's End is there was a legacy game a few waves ago where you build your own mage over the course of the game by adding on its abilities and that mage's starting card. You built all of this and customized it. And even that mage from the legacy game, when you finished it, you could take your own homemade mage and play it with all the rest of the Aeon's End content. So we're really committed to all of these games, just adding up to the number of permutations of possible play experiences you can have, so that, no one ever gets bored.
No. So we went from the original Aeon's End with the scary red guy on the cover, and then we went to War Eternal, right? That was our second base game that came out. And it was basically just another Aeon's End. So we're continuing this story a little bit. We're seeing some new nemesis and mages, like you said. And then we, like you said, went into Legacy, this big box, which thankfully, because there's so much content, you can put it all in the Legacy box. And I've heard people say that they like this one for newer players.
Yeah.
If you're new to Aeon's End, this is a good one to start with because it helps ramp you up through the game. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Aeons End Legacy is an amazing introductory experience because, like I said, the sort of storyline of the game is that you are building your own mage and giving it new abilities, which means that when you start, you have a totally baseline mage with a baseline deck. Like I said to you earlier, that every mage plays differently and everyone builds differently because you all start from different places. That's not actually true in the very beginning of Legacy. It plays a lot more like a normal deck builder where you don't have to worry about all those sundry things that make Aeon's End more complex. And then after the first fight, you add on more abilities. After the second fight, you add on even more abilities. And by the time you reach the third fight, you're playing all of Aeon's End. But it's in much more bite-sized chunks, very digestible, so that it doesn't all have to be explained up front to people who would be, overwhelmed or intimidated by the complexities of Aeon's End. So it's really good for onboarding new players or people who, play games more casually, because even casual gamers can really enjoy Aeon's End. It plays very simply, even though the decision making has a lot of depth of complexity.
Right on. So for those of you who are new to Aeons End in here, I went ahead and I made a little, whoop, you can go ahead. It's actually on sale right now on Amazon. So you can get your copy of Aeons End Legacy. And we then went to a new kind of style of Aeons End after that, where we wanted to still kind of enjoy some of that legacy like campaign like element. And you introduced with the next one,
the expedition system.
The expedition system
In New Age.
In New Age, which brought us to a new age, so a new part of the story for Aeon's End. And if I'm not mistaken, you were a heavy part of the design development process for that one, correct?
Yeah, so I actually got brought onto the company sort of midway through the process of Aeons End the New Age. Most of the design elements had been solidified, and I helped out with the development of them. But my big contribution was the story. Because after Legacy was sort of the first introduction of a through line narrative of what was going on with the characters and what was going on with the story as you fought each successive battle. And we liked that so much, we wanted to make sure that all our games, Legacy or not, had a similar level of storytelling so that we could really engage in the world and engage in our characters and make the play experience feel more like, an adventure, a storybook that you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's not just a game. So I came on and I helped write the expedition narrative for New Age about what is going on with your mages. And the interesting thing about the expedition system, like you said, it's pseudo legacy. So even though there are no stickers, you don't write on anything, you don't mess with any components, the fights happen in a specific sequential order. And after each fight, you open an envelope, and inside are new mages and new cards for your market and treasures, which make your mages stronger. So you can choose to add treasures into your deck before you start that follow you from game to game. So it's a bit like leveling up in a video game, so that the nemesis get harder and harder as you go along, as you follow the story to fight the big boss at the end of the 4-fight expedition. And that's sort of what we introduced in New Age, and it was really popular.
And the other thing about the New Age is that we're now following the younger generation, the next generation of mages, right? And we're going to travel with them into Outcast, which is the one that just came out this year.
Yeah. So if you're a big story buff like me and you want to follow the Aeons End story from where it begins to where we are now, it really begins in Legacy with the story that was introduced there. And then the New Age takes place 30 years after the events of Legacy. So it's got a lot of the children of the mages that were in the earlier games, and sort of the next generation, like you said. And then the story continues in one of the expansions of the New Age called Into the Wild, where we follow some of these new characters down to the south, and they discover that one of the mages who they thought was working with them, who used to be a character in the old Aeon's End games, seems to be a traitor who's turned against their people. And then our fifth game, Aeons End Outcasts, which just came out and is available also now, we shift our lens to following that traitor mage and seeing what she's up to and what her actual motivations are, and outside of the main group of mages we've been following up until that point. So it's just, again, fleshing out the world and seeing all these different, more complex stories that have been happening, but still involving all these characters that we've been playing with in game after game.
Well, so that's excellent. So the big thing is there's basically a new Aeons in every year. So we are getting ready to head into 2021. We're coming out of kind of a weird year here for games. Heading into 2021, we have some exciting plans, right? There is, like I said, the spoiler was the cover sort of the next Aeons End. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we're pretty far along in the process of developing Aeons End 6, which we're calling Aeons End, The Legacy of Gravehold.
Uh-oh. We might have lost Sydney for just a second. It looks like she froze.
The third
So
Aeons
there
End,
she is.
you aren't building mages this time. This time you will be playing with a bunch of the mages that you've gotten to know over the course of all 5 of the preceding games, all the way back from Aeons 1, Aeons End 1. Some of those mages are returning, some more Eternal mages are coming back, and then New Age mages and Outcast mages are all coming together for sort of grand finale of the story that we've been building up into this point. And you'll be leveling up these existing mages and working with them and seeing their story and what they've kind of reached at this point. And it's going to take a lot of sort of inspiration or cues from the expedition system because it's been so popular, and the stickers, rather than creating your mage, are going to augment it, similar to how treasures did, but in a new, more far-reaching way, so that you become stronger and stronger as you go from fight to fight, while the nemesis get harder and harder, building up to sort of an ultimate battle where you have to take down. I won't spoil what the actual final boss is, but it's a pretty epic story.
And you just said conclusion. So is
Yeah.
that the end of the Aeons End series? What?
Uh,
What?
no, we don't want to end the Aeons End series, but we also don't want to sort of drag on these stories forever. Some of our fans, our long-running fans, have the question: how old is Brahma actually? She was old in Aeons End 1, and now it has been 30 some odd years, and she is even older.
She's very old.
So we think that we want to give satisfying conclusions to the mages that we currently have. And then after this, we'll actually be free to open up other stories in the world of Aeon's End and explore, the future of this planet, and what are they doing after this and what are future generations doing, rather than try and, come up with a new monster of the week that drags them on and on forever. This is very much a conclusion of the storyline that began in Legacy, is going to end in Legacy 2.
Wonderful. So, what's the future look like beyond next year's game? And then we'll get into some of the questions coming through in chat for you.
Yeah, I mean, so that's pretty far out. We don't have exact answers on that. Some of the things we've been discussing are maybe not having a standalone box at this stage, since so many of our players are long-term fans who have a lot of the tokens and dials, and that's not very necessary for them, but instead having multiple medium-sized boxes that are halfway in between big box and small box expansion, so that they can have a storyline, an expedition, just like we know people enjoy, without being as large and as costly as the full big box expansion is. And that way, again, we can tell, multiple stories and sort of spread them out across different new characters.
Very cool. So let's get into some of our viewer questions here. I'm going to throw up this one from Rogue Ninja Games. Do you have a favorite mage or favorite nemesis to battle?
My favorites change every time I play new games. I am always in love with the mages we're currently designing. But before, of the mages who are out, I really like Nook from Shattered Dreams, which is one of the expansions off of New Age. And I also really like Inko. He is in the Into the Wild expansion, also off of New Age. Those are my 2 favorites. As for Nemesis, I feel like I have to say I like Experiment 153. He's the first nemesis of the Outcast expedition, because everybody apparently finds him super hard and annoying to fight, but I love fighting him and I want to push back against that narrative.
That's awesome. All right. So there's a few production-oriented questions, and you may or may not be able to answer these, and that's okay. But I'm going to go ahead and throw them up anyway. This question is, any plans on including an insert in future games?
Will have some inserts, inserts that suit the content that comes in the games. In terms of an insert that will hold all Aeons End content, that's a pretty difficult thing for us to do, especially with the fact that we're not planning on, capping the amount of Aeons End content we're creating. But there are a lot of cool third-party inserts that are for sale that, they do it well if you're interested.
Absolutely.
In organizing your collection. Broken Token has one.
The main one. Yeah.
There are other ones too. So
Etsy is a wonderful place. I find all kinds of lovely variations to fit my needs there. And definitely there's some very talented people out there who figured out how to organize everything in a really cool way. So this one is about an app. So do we have any plans on implementing a mobile app randomizer? They say that would be very helpful with this much content.
I don't think we have specific plans. We don't really dabble in apps. I know that there's Aeons End Digital, the Steam game where you can play online. Handelabra is the company that handles that, and they have some of the digital Aeons End rights. So I'm not 100% versed on where an app for randomization falls in that. I do know you were going to promo the Discord earlier. Someone made like a bot to go in the Discord that if you type a card name, it will bring up that card, which I bet could be edited to work as a randomizer for having all of the card names in it. But that's the work for someone who knows more about computers than me.
Yeah, I really like that idea. It's a really good suggestion. There are apps out there like Santorini where you get the game in the app, but you also have the companion app that works with the main game. So it helps you, again, they have so many different characters in Santorini, helps you randomize them. So that might be something Direwolf is bringing, or I'm sorry, the digital app company that you guys are working with bringing to, I said Direwolf because it's the other game.
Yeah, Handelabra.
Handelabra will be bringing to the app maybe in the future. So that would be really neat.
Yeah, I know we do have an app for randomizing turn order and keeping track of Nemesis health, I believe, but I don't think it has a market card randomizer in it. So if that's something anyone in the chat was looking for, that does exist. It might only be on Android, though.
Got it. Well, we're really excited to see what's coming next year, early in the year. We could probably looking at like Q1 for the next Aeons End Kickstarter. So be sure to tune into all of our channels for that. Follow us on Twitter at IBC Games, Facebook, Indie Boards and Cards, of course, and Instagram. We will go ahead and sign off for now. And thank you so much, Sydney, for being here. And thanks for everyone for watching.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.